You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, Patreon, and thanks once again for all of your support. And I hope that you enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. Bob Steenstra, the resident guide here at Addressing Gettysburg, joined me, and we interviewed Dr. Peter S. Carmichael, who you probably know from the Civil War Institute here at Gettysburg College. He's a professor here as well, of course. And he's written several books: Lee's Young Artillerist, William R.J. Pegram, Audacity Personified, The Generalship of Robert E. Lee, The Last Generation, Young Virginians in Peace, War and Reunion, and most recently, in 2018, The War for the Common Soldier, How Men Thought, Fought, and Survived in Civil War Armies. This book I'm in the middle of reading now, and it is fantastic. It gets into, as much as he possibly can, into the heart and soul of the Civil War soldier. What made them tick? What were the external pressures that they were feeling from the civilian society back home? And how did they juggle that with the in-their-face army discipline and realities of war that they had to deal with? So much went into the life and the psyche of the Civil War soldier, as it does in any other society at any point in time. And I guess my point to you is, when you read about the common soldier in the War for the Common Soldier, it's hard not to see yourself in one way or another. Anyway, you're going to love it. Just a little background on Dr. Carmichael. He began his academic career at Western Carolina University in 1997. He was the first scholar in residence at Gettysburg National Military Park in 1999. He became a professor at University of North Carolina, Greensboro, and West Virginia University, and finally here at Gettysburg College as the Robert C. Fleur Professor of Civil War Studies and the director of the Civil War Institute, as I mentioned before. And he's just an awesome guy to talk to. And if you ever get the opportunity, do it. If you see him somewhere, say hi to the guy. He'll say hi. He's very friendly. Such a fun guy to talk to. He's a fountain of knowledge, which is great because I'm learning, you're learning. So let's learn together as I interview with Bob Steenstra, Dr. Peter S. Carmichael, about the War for the Common Soldier. All different aspects, as long as I can tie it into Gettysburg somehow.
Yeah.
And so
there's plenty of Gettysburg. In fact, a criticism of my book is that there's too much Eastern theater and not enough West. And I said, Earl Hess, he's a good friend of mine, said that. I said, Earl, the cover of the book is an Indiana regiment, by the way, an Indiana regiment in Tennessee at Duck River. I said, come on, man, doesn't that count for something?
Have you gotten a lot of criticism for it?
Yeah, that's probably one part. I mean, it's the book is still pretty fresh in terms of when reviews, but I mean, that's certainly one concern.
But that happens with anything. You're going to get critics.
Yeah, I don't. None of that stuff bothers me.
Right.
I just got a really nice review out that a person really understood the book, right? And that's what you really seek for. I mean, lavishing praise is whatever, but when someone really sort of gets what the ideas that you're trying to put forth, that's when it's gratifying and somewhat reassuring, right? That you're just not writing and it's just going nowhere, which, I mean, we all need to be, I think, self-aware of the fact that we operate in pretty small ponds and these are just little ripples. Yeah. But, I still, and we can talk about this, I still firmly believe that the value of what we do collectively here, I speak for all of us, is we are recovering the voices of these men who I think deserve to be heard. And,
I agree.
And so that's kind of the motivating force behind it.
So, we've already started.
Yeah, whenever.
So here we are.
Yeah.
So what was the idea behind the book? What made you want to write this particular?
Yeah. So The War for the Common Soldier is part of the Littlefield series published by the University of North Carolina Press. It's a series that's dedicated to key issues or topics in the Civil War. And so the editors of the series, Gary Gallagher and Michael Parrish. Gallagher retired from the University of Virginia.
And
Michael Parrish is a Baylor. I studied under Dr.
Gallagher. Yep.
I studied under him. So they invited me to write the volume on the common soldier. So that's how it began nearly 10 years ago. And what I was up against was an unusual challenge, and that's a field that is really fully matured, that there's so much exciting and impressive scholarship on the life of the common soldier that I was having a hard time to find my place within this historiography. So it took a while because I didn't want to write just another book about why men fought. And I'm not diminishing that question. I think it's an important one. But historians like James McPherson and Joe Glatar, Chandra Manning, Susanna Urel, there's a very long list. And they've all done impressive and important work. So I was assigned the task of writing a book that synthesized existing scholarship and create a new argument or new interpretation. And that's what I was up against. And it required that I become a very different historian. I was trained as a social historian, meaning that I was primarily interested in finding the letters of these men and recovering their lives as they lived it. And I know I needed to go a new direction, which meant that I had to become a cultural historian, which I think there's a key difference. And when a cultural historian, you're more concerned about getting into the inner world of these individuals, not just what they thought, but how they thought. Making that leap to how they thought, I left a lot of folks behind. And we can talk about it. My editors were not particularly happy with this book in its first incarnation.
Why is that?
Well, they thought that the case study approach that I took, so this book pivots around, I'd say, roughly 15 to 20 individuals.
Okay.
They're deep contextual stories, they're narratives. And there was some question as to whether these individuals were representative of the common soldier. My argument to them is that there is no common soldier, and the search for one is an elusive one. It gets us really nowhere. I think rather we need to take men whose lives offer us an opportunity to not just explore how they thought, but to understand how they thought and acted within the broader cultural world that they breathed in, right? And for many, that approach is an approach that seems too disconnected from the evidence itself, that I'm too suggestive in places. I will certainly live with that criticism.
Too suggestive in what way?
Well, that, for example, when you try to understand why a man deserted, they often don't write it out in some grand proclamation. These are the reasons why, from number one being the most important to number 10. They don't do that, right? So what you have to do then is you have to look at that context, and it has to be a very deep read. In that context, for example, the 3rd North Carolina, a soldier in that regiment, John Futch, F-U-T-C-H, who fought right here at Gettysburg. His brother died in his arms at Gettysburg. He spoke his letters. He's illiterate. He spoke those letters to a number of men. Many of them were barely literate themselves. By piecing those things together and by looking at other sources, I get a sense of that world that he inhabited that go beyond just his words. I have a sense of that regiment in particular suffered, I think, significantly from a logistical breakdown after Gettysburg. I also have some sense of the breakdown on the home front, which is absolutely critical to understanding all these men. The idea we can go to this battlefield and just talk about right flank and left flank and not think about the households where these men came is just, I think, a grievous mistake.
I agree.
A grievous mistake. So that's how you start to piece these things together and to try to get what I would say, and this was my goal, I wanted the totality of the soldier experience. How they thought, how they felt, how they smelled, how they touched. Right? I wanted all of that. Right. And that goes from the material things that they carried to the words that they wrote to the reactions and relationships with their comrades as well as their loved ones. I wanted to try to do it all instead of a snapshot approach. Don't say that too quickly.
Can I interject?
Yeah, please say time. You have your own opinions about this as well.
Well, no, not at all. Yeah. In fact, You introduced us to Oliver Wendell Holmes. Of course, most of us know who that was. Yeah. And you end, in a sense, with Oliver Wendell Holmes.
For those who don't, who was Oliver Wendell?
Oliver Wendell Holmes was in the Harvard regiment. He was Harvard educated. He interrupted his education. He became a soldier in the 20th Massachusetts, and he'll leave the service in 1864, and he'll go on to become Supreme Court Justice.
That's right.
And he was a legal realist.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's going to change American jurisprudence on the Supreme Court. And I'm wondering if you didn't purposely focus on him in the end of the book, because he is an example of this bare-knuckled pragmatism that you're writing about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a key theme that runs through the book is pragmatism. And I drew heavily from Louis Menand. I think that's how you pronounce his last name, Menand, Menand, who wrote Metaphysical Club. It's a brilliant piece of intellectual history. Much of it I don't quite grasp. Some of it I do. And the section on Oliver Wendell Holmes I drew from heavily. And I give Menand all the credit in the world. And what pragmatism simply is that men during the course of the war on both sides, they came to value an idea not for its intrinsic value, but for its practicality. Let me give you a quick example from Holmes and why, again, I relied on him. I think Menand thought that Holmes became less ideological. My point is that pragmatism actually allowed these men, in many cases, to hold on to their idealism. And so here's my example. After December 13th, those attacks against Marie's Heights at the Battle of Fredericksburg, in which Holmes was not able to be with his regiment, but he watched them. He watched them fight in the town of Fredericksburg, and of course, the assault against Marie's Heights. He was very taken, very moved by it all. I think he even acknowledged that he shed a tear. And then his father, who was, of course, no intellectual lightweight himself, wrote a letter to Holmes after Fredericksburg, after this great cataclysmic defeat, and said, "We will prevail, son, because our side has morality. We have God on our side. Our cause is the just cause. The rebel cause is not. And that's the reason why we'll prevail." Well, that just infuriated Oliver Wendell Holmes, who had just seen his buddies go to their death, and go to their death in something that actually he almost admired. He did admire the professionalism of the men, their training, right? And learning from their mistakes. And so he wrote his father back, chastised his father, and said, "This is absurd what you're saying. What's ultimately going to decide this thing is professionalism, practicality. It is adjusting to the circumstances as they present to us. Right. If we live by high ideas in some dogmatic way, we're all going to just go to our death here, and for no good purpose in the end." So Holmes's example is a powerful one, and because Holmes writes so brilliantly and so openly, he was a perfect case study, right, to introduce at the beginning of the book, but certainly to close with.
So can I just say, going back to your goal, I taught teenagers for 38 years U.S. history.
God bless you.
And, well, had I given the assignment to find out what was life like for the soldier of the Civil War, at first brush, I wouldn't give your book at a certain level of creature comforts. I would go to a veteran like John Billings, Hardtack, and Coffee.
That's right.
If they wanted to get deeper to the causes, well, let's go to McPherson. James McPherson for the audience. But boy, after this, I think you get all of it and another level here. And so let me sort of compliment you by paraphrasing Oliver Wendell Holmes. He said, "We have shared the incommunicable experience of war." I think, as well as any 21st contemporary historian, you have communicated the incommunicable experience of war. And you weren't part of it. But I know you've done it, and as you need to, through the words of the participants. And so I would say well done with that.
I mean, that means obviously a great deal. That's the kind of thing you want to hear as an author. But I think that your framing of what your assessment of my book is spot on. And you're actually pointing to what was one of the issues that made my editors uncomfortable. Because what they wanted this book to be was the first book that a person should read about the common soldier. I'd like to believe that could still work for somebody.
Why not?
I think it could. I think it could. I think that, I mean, I might still send someone, certainly Billings, I love that. I love Bell Wiley's book, The Life of Johnny Reb and Billy Yankovic. I mean, I draw from these individuals. And so in my attempt to bring all those layers of the soldier experience together, the level of complexity at times, I can understand why that might be challenging to some readers, but the case study narrative approach, I think, is what...
Hello, Getty's Nerds. It's Matt, and I hope you enjoyed that preview of our premium content that can now be found over at patreon.com. I just want to let you know that Addressing Gettysburg will always have free content for you to listen to in the forms of our narrative episodes like Antietam to Chancellorsville and the upcoming episode entitled Invasion, June 1863, appendix episodes, and our wildly popular Ask a Gettysburg Guide episodes. But episodes like Antietam to Chancellorsville take months to produce, as things are now. I hear from people almost every day asking how long until the next episode is finished. And the answer is, when I have the time, I can do it. Your support at Patreon can cut down the time it takes to produce an episode by months. Maybe you don't care about that. Maybe the Ask a Gettysburg Guide episodes are what you like, but they leave you wanting to learn more. Well, fear not. More is what Patreon is all about. Patrons receive access to new premium episodes each week. These episodes are straight interviews or discussions with licensed battlefield guides, rangers, local historians, academics, authors, public historians, people from the Gettysburg community who do impressive things, and frankly, just about anyone who can talk on a subject related to Gettysburg. I want to make sure that the interest you already have in Gettysburg is enriched with our premium content. Your support means the world to me, because that means it will be easier to produce content that will bring Gettysburg to more people and, hopefully, more people to Gettysburg. And the podcast episodes are just the beginning. So please go to patreon.com/addressinggettysburg. That's patreon.com/addressinggettysburg and become a patron. I thank you in advance.